I watched my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, hurl a heavy leather suitcase into Cedar Ridge Reservoir, then speed away like she was fleeing her own guilt. When I dragged that case out of the water and unzipped it, something inside moved, and the sound it made froze my blood. I'm Harold Bishop, 63 years old, and before the police, the courts, and the reckoning that followed, there was this one moment, and what I found inside. Before I go any further, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. Every story I share carries a piece of my life, the losses, the lessons, and the strength we find when the world falls apart. Your support means more than you can imagine, especially for stories like this one. My name is Harold Bishop. I'm 63 years old, a retired steelworker, a widower, and lately, a man who talks more to memories than to people. My home sits on a small hill above Cedar Ridge Reservoir, quiet country land with water that glows gold at sunset. I built that porch myself, plank by plank, back when my son Michael was just a boy with scraped knees and a head full of dreams. These days, the porch feels too wide, the silence too deep. Michael used to fill this place with noise, hammering, laughter, the creak of his boots, and the sound of his guitar echoing through the rooms. His mother would hum along while she cooked Sunday roast, and I'd swear the whole house breathed with us. But both of them are gone now. My wife, 10 years back from a heart failure, and Michael, 6 months ago, from what everyone called a tragic accident. That word, accident, never sat right with me. It made his death sound like a mistake, something small. But Michael's car didn't just slide off the road. It slammed into a tree on a clear night, on a road he'd driven his whole life. He died instantly. His wife, Vanessa, walked away with a few bruises. The world called it a miracle. I called it suspicious. Since then, life has been quiet. Too quiet. My mornings start the same. Black coffee, the newspaper, and the company of the old cat that wanders in from the shed. I fix what's broken around the property. Fences, tools, the roof shingles that keep coming loose in the wind. It gives my hands something to do, even when my heart feels empty. But every evening, around 5 o'clock, I sit on that same porch with a cup of tea and watch the light dance across the reservoir. That's what I was doing on that October evening, when everything changed. The air was heavy that day, the kind that clings to your clothes and slows your breath. Then I heard it, the sharp grind of tires on gravel. I looked up to see a silver sedan tearing down the dirt road toward the water, kicking up a trail of dust. Even before I saw her face, I knew the car. Vanessa's. She was driving like someone running from the law, or from her conscience. She slammed the brakes so hard, the sound made my chest tighten. For a moment she just sat there, hands gripping the wheel, head bowed. Then she got out. Fast. Wearing that gray dress Michael gave her on their second anniversary. Her hair was wild, her eyes red and her movements jerky, like she was fighting herself. She popped open the trunk, and that's when I saw it, a large brown leather suitcase, the same one I'd gifted them as a wedding present. "So you two can travel together someday," I'd said back then. She dragged it out, stumbled toward the water, and stood there trembling. I called her name, but the wind carried my voice away. She swung that suitcase once, twice, then hurled it into the reservoir. The splash echoed through the valley like a gunshot. For a long moment, she didn't move. She just stared at the ripples spreading across the dark water, as if watching something sink wasn't enough. She had to see it disappear. Then, without looking back, she ran to the car, slammed the door, and sped off. I stood there frozen, my teacup slipping from my hand and shattering on the steps. My mind raced. What had I just seen? Something inside me knew this wasn't just grief, or madness, or another of Vanessa's dramas. It was something darker. Before I knew it, I was running, or rather, stumbling as fast as my old knees would allow. My boots slid in the mud as I reached the bank. The suitcase was still floating, half sunk, spinning slowly in the water. I waded in without thinking, the cold biting through my jeans. I grabbed the handle and pulled with all the strength I had left. The suitcase was heavier than it should have been. I dragged it ashore, chest heaving, heart pounding. Then I heard it, a faint sound, muffled, weak, a cry. For a second I thought I was losing my mind, But then it came again, soft, breathless, desperate. My hands shook as I fought with the zipper, swollen and jammed from the water. It tore open, and when I looked inside, the world stopped. A baby. A newborn boy. Wrapped in a blue blanket, barely breathing, skin cold and pale. Alive. I dropped to my knees, my body shaking harder than it had in years. "Dear God," I whispered. "Please, not again." And that's how it began. Because in that moment, kneeling on the wet ground, holding a child that shouldn't have survived, I knew my quiet life was over. I still remember the feel of his tiny fingers against my palm that night. Barely there, but warm enough to mean hope. I ran into the house, dripping wet water and mud trailing across the floor. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the phone. When the emergency operator answered, my voice cracked. "I found a baby in a suitcase. He's alive, but freezing." Minutes later, sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights reflected off the water outside my window. 2 paramedics rushed in, a man and a young woman. They didn't waste a second. The younger one checked the baby's pulse and said, "Faint, but there." The older one wrapped him in towels and started oxygen. Within seconds, they had him on a stretcher, and I was in the back of the ambulance, holding that soaked blue blanket like it was sacred. By the time we reached Ridgefield General Hospital, the baby's breathing had evened out, but he was still fighting. The doctors took him straight into the neonatal unit. I stood there, drenched, staring through the glass as they worked on him, a tangle of tubes and hands and machines. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then the questions began. 2 detectives showed up not long after, one older, one younger. The senior officer introduced herself as Detective Nora Patel. Sharp eyes, calm voice, but you could tell she didn't miss a thing. "Mr. Bishop," she said, notebook in hand, "we understand you found the child. Can you tell us what happened?" I told her everything. The car, the woman, the suitcase, the sound of the splash. I told her it was Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, my son's widow. Her expression didn't change, but her tone did. "You're certain of that? Certain as the ground I'm standing on, and the distance from which you witnessed this. From my porch, maybe 100 yards, give or take. But it was her. I'd know that car anywhere." Patel made a note, then exchanged a glance with her partner. I didn't like that look. It was the kind cops give when they're already doubting you. Later that night, one of the nurses, her name was Camille, brought me coffee. She smiled softly. "You saved that child's life tonight, Mr. Bishop." I shook my head. "I just happened to look up." "Sometimes," she said. "That's the difference between life and death." I didn't sleep at all. I stayed in that waiting room, staring through the window as the machines beeped softly. Somewhere around dawn, Detective Patel came back. Her face was more serious this time. "Mr. Bishop, we've reviewed traffic camera footage. Vanessa's vehicle was recorded at a shopping center 12 miles away at the exact time you say she was at the reservoir." I blinked. "That can't be right." "The timestamps are accurate," she said. "Then your clock's wrong." She sighed, closing her notebook. "We'll double-check, but grief can cloud memory, Mr. Bishop. You've suffered a terrible loss. Sometimes the mind—" "Don't patronize me," I cut in. "I know what I saw." Her eyes softened, but her words didn't. "We'll be in touch." After she left, I sat in silence. Maybe she thought I was crazy, some old man seeing ghosts in the dark. But I wasn't imagining things. I'd seen her. I knew it. Hours passed. Then the doctor appeared, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a gentle voice. "Mr. Bishop," he said, "the child's stable. We ran a few tests, including DNA." He hesitated. "Sir, the baby is biologically related to you." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "He's your grandson, Mr. Bishop. Your son's child." I gripped the edge of the chair to keep from falling. "Michael had a child?" "Yes," the doctor said quietly. "A newborn, likely born just days ago." The room spun. Michael's gone, I thought. His wife tried to drown his son. Detective Patel returned a few hours later, this time holding a folder. "We confirmed the doctor's report. The baby is your grandson. But Vanessa, she's vanished. Her house is empty, her phone disconnected. She's gone." I just stared at her. "Gone?" Patel nodded. We've put out alerts. If she contacts you, let us know immediately. Then she paused, looking me straight in the eye. Mr. Bishop, off the record, do you believe she had something to do with your son's death? The question hit like a hammer. What kind of question is that? One we have to ask, she said. Because we just re-examined your son's accident report. His car's brakes were tampered with. The words echoed through my head, tampered with. Patel stood, closing her folder. We'll pursue this quietly, but I thought you should hear it from me first. When she left, I sat there for a long time, watching the baby through the glass. He was breathing stronger now, a fighter, just like his father. That was the night everything inside me changed. My son had been murdered, my grandson had been thrown into a lake, and the woman who did it thought she'd escaped. That's when I knew I would not stay silent. The days after that conversation felt like walking through fog, not just the kind that sits low over the hills, but the kind that seeps into your bones and refuses to lift. I hardly slept. I spent every waking hour at Ridgefield General, sitting in that plastic chair outside the NICU, watching the rise and fall of a tiny chest beneath a web of tubes. Every beep of the monitor was both comfort and torture. Nurse Camille checked on me often. He's holding strong, she'd say. The same words each day. He's a fighter. That word became my anchor, fighter. Because if that little boy could fight his way back from death, then so could I, at least long enough to get him justice. At night, when the hospital grew quiet, I'd drive home to the empty house. I'd sit in the recliner and stare at the photo of Michael and Vanessa on the mantel, the one from their honeymoon. Her head resting on his shoulder, her smile soft and convincing. I remember thinking how lucky my boy was back then, how wrong I was. Sometimes, in the dark, I'd whisper to Michael like he was still there. You didn't deserve this, son. Neither did he. The house would creak in reply, the old boards groaning like they agreed with me. Then the nightmares came. I'd see Vanessa at the edge of the reservoir again, her hair wild, her eyes glassy, lifting that suitcase, hurling it into the dark. I'd wake up sweating, gasping, certain I could still hear the baby crying from inside. Detective Patel kept me updated as the days passed. She's on the move, she'd say. Used a fake ID. We're tracking her. But every lead fizzled out. Vanessa was slippery, calculated. She'd planned all of this long before that night at the lake. Then one afternoon, Patel called with news that made my blood run cold. We found your son's mechanic, she said. He's been hiding out in Oklahoma. We got him to talk. I held my breath. Talk about what? He says Vanessa paid him to tamper with the brakes. $2,000 up front. Promised another $2,000 after the job was done. For a moment I couldn't speak. My hands went cold. You have proof. We traced the transfer straight from her account, she said. It's solid. I thanked her and hung up, though I barely remember doing it. I just sat there staring at the floor, every sound fading into nothing. She killed him. My boy. The woman I'd welcomed into this family, trusted, fed, hugged like a daughter. She murdered him and tried to bury his legacy with his child. That night, I poured a drink for the first time in nearly a decade. The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't dull the ache. I walked through Michael's old room, everything still where he left it. The blueprints for the business he'd been building. His guitar by the window. His flannel jacket draped over the chair. I could still smell his cologne faintly in the air. When Vanessa first came into our lives, she had that city charm, bright eyes, a quick tongue, always talking about success. She made Michael believe they were unstoppable together. I remember his mother saying, "She's ambitious. She'll push him to be better." Maybe she was right. But ambition turned to greed, and greed turned to murder. The next day, Patel called again. The DA's office wants to proceed, but we need one last piece of evidence, something tying her directly to intent. Without it, her lawyer could claim it was an accident. I looked out at the reservoir through my window and said quietly, "If she makes contact, you'll know." Later that night, as the wind howled outside, I sat by the fire and reread Michael's letters, the ones he'd sent me years ago when he first married Vanessa. There was one line that hit different this time. "Dad, if anything ever happens to me, promise you'll take care of my family, even if it means protecting them from themselves." I folded that letter and placed it in my coat pocket. I knew what I had to do. Before dawn, I drove back to the hospital. Miles was stronger now, breathing on his own, tiny hands twitching as he slept. I rested my palm on the glass and whispered, "You're safe now, son. I'll keep my promise." The world had taken everything from me once, but it wasn't going to happen again. When I stepped outside, the first light of morning broke across the reservoir, painting the water gold. For the first time in months, I didn't feel helpless. I felt focused, determined. My son's murderer was out there, thinking she'd buried her secrets for good. But I was done grieving, done doubting myself. I was a father still, and a grandfather now. And I began to think, very carefully. They say revenge is a young man's game, all fire, no patience. But I've lived long enough to know that the best revenge doesn't come with noise. It comes with silence. It comes from thinking carefully. The following weeks passed in a blur of routine. Every morning I brought flowers to the hospital and read the newspaper beside my grandson's crib. People saw an old man clinging to hope. What they didn't see was the storm building under that calm. I wasn't just waiting for Miles to get stronger. I was waiting for Vanessa to make her move. Detective Patel dropped by often, sharing what little progress they made. "We've traced her accounts," she told me one afternoon. "She wired $250,000 offshore before she vanished. Belize. She's clever." I gave a slow nod. She always was, too clever for her own good. Patel studied me for a moment. "You don't sound angry." "I've been angry," I said quietly. "Now I'm focused." After she left, I went through Michael's old desk again. Bills, notebooks, business files. I almost missed it. A sealed envelope taped beneath the top drawer. Inside was a short letter in his handwriting. "Dad, if anything happens to me, look in the lockbox. Vanessa doesn't know about it." My hands shook as I read it. The next morning, I drove to the Ridgefield Credit Union. The manager recognized me and helped me access Michael's safe deposit box. Inside was a flash drive, a journal, and another note addressed to me. "Dad, I think Vanessa's planning something. She's been asking about insurance policies and title deeds. I changed my will. Everything now goes to our child if she's pregnant. Please make sure they're protected." I sat in that silent room for a long time. My son had seen the darkness coming, and no one listened. He tried to protect his future, his child, and it cost him his life. That letter was the last piece I needed. I called Detective Patel. "I found something," I told her. She came by the next morning, eyes sharp but cautious. I handed her the letter. "This is strong," she said, reading carefully. "If we can get her to talk, this could secure a conviction, but we'll need her voice on record." "Then we'll get it," I replied. "Harold," she said, lowering her tone, "don't do anything risky. Let us handle this." "I'm not doing anything rash," I said. "I'm doing what fathers do, finishing what my son started." That night I went home and stared at the phone for a long time. I still had Vanessa's number, saved out of habit, maybe out of weakness. I dialed. The ring barely lasted 2 seconds before a familiar voice answered. "Harold," she said, her tone cold and sharp. "I wondered when you'd call. I found him, Vanessa." A long silence. "What?" "The baby. Miles. He's alive." "That's impossible." "No, it's not. DNA confirmed. He's my grandson." The line went dead. Within an hour, Detective Patel called back. We traced her number. Burn phone. It pinged near Miller's Crossing, abandoned warehouse district. "We can't move in yet. Not without proof she'll show." "She'll come," I said. "Trust me." 2 nights later, my phone rang again. Her voice was lower this time, desperate, fraying. "We need to meet," she said. "You don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I understand just fine," I replied. "Meet me at the Reservoir, same place, tomorrow night, alone." "You'd better not be lying," she hissed. "Wouldn't dream of it." The next morning I met with Patel. She wasn't happy. "You're baiting her, Harold. This could go bad fast." "I'll wear a wire," I said. "You'll get your confession." She stared at me for a long moment, then slid a small transmitter across the desk. "You get her to talk, we'll be there. But don't play hero." "I'm not a hero," I said softly. "I'm a father." That night, the air at Cedar Ridge was heavy with mist. The same water that almost took my grandson lapped quietly against the shore. I stood by the tree line, the tiny wire taped under my jacket, and waited. Headlights appeared in the distance. Vanessa's silver sedan rolled to a stop, gravel crunching beneath the tires. She stepped out, thinner now, paler, but still wearing that cold confidence like armor. "You shouldn't have called me," she said, eyes darting. "I saved your child," I told her. "You should be thanking me." Her face twisted. "You ruined everything." "Michael ruined it when he changed the will, didn't he?" Her eyes widened. "How do you—" "I read his letter. The one he left for me." She froze, the mask slipping. "You don't understand. It was supposed to be mine, all of it." "And when it wasn't," I said quietly, "you killed him. And you tried to drown your own child." Her lips trembled. "He wasn't supposed to survive." I took one step closer, meeting her eyes. "But he did. The recorder in my pocket was live." Her words, every single one, were being transmitted to the unmarked car waiting in the trees. The wind picked up, and for a second, neither of us spoke. Her hand disappeared into her coat pocket. I knew that motion, the same one I'd seen in men cornered by truth. But I didn't flinch, because the stage was set, and all I had to do was wait. The air that night was still and heavy, the kind that makes sound travel farther than it should. The surface of the reservoir shimmered like dark glass, reflecting a sky that had forgotten the stars. I stood where it had all begun, the same bank where Vanessa threw that suitcase, the same spot where I dragged it out. Only this time, I wasn't the one caught off guard. The small wire under my jacket buzzed faintly. Detective Patel's voice whispered through the earpiece before fading. "We're in position, Harold. Keep her calm. Get her talking." I tightened my coat against the cold. My heartbeat was steady, slower than I expected. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was purpose. I wasn't afraid anymore, just tired. Tired of injustice, tired of silence. Headlights appeared in the distance, winding down the dirt road toward me. The silver sedan slowed, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Vanessa stepped out, her coat drawn tight, her movements sharp. Even in the moonlight, I could see the toll the past weeks had taken, dark circles under her eyes, lips cracked, hands trembling. But her voice, when she spoke, was the same, cold and entitled. "You came alone?" she asked, scanning the darkness. "I'm an old man," I said quietly. "I don't have anyone left to bring." She took a step closer. "You shouldn't have called me, and yet here you are." "You think you can scare me?" she snapped. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "I know you killed my son," I said, "and tried to drown my grandson." Her face twitched, a flicker of panic she tried to bury. "You can't prove that." I took a slow step forward. Michael's letter, the mechanic's confession, the bank transfers, and now I tapped my chest lightly. "Your voice." Her eyes widened. "What?" "You're wearing a wire," she hissed, her tone breaking for the first time. "No," I said softly. "You are." For a moment, neither of us moved. The wind brushed against the reeds, and a single drop of water fell from the branches above. Then she reached into her coat. "Don't," I warned, but she already had the gun in her hand. Her voice cracked as she pointed it at me. "Turn it off, Harold. I swear I will shoot you." "You've already shot your way through this family," I said quietly. "Go ahead if that's what's left of you." She hesitated. Her hands trembled. Her eyes darted toward the trees, where she must have sensed movement. "You brought them here," she said. "I brought the truth," I answered. Her lips quivered. "You don't understand. He was going to take it all from me, after everything I gave him." "You didn't give him anything," I said. "He gave you everything. Love, trust, a home. And you traded all of it for greed." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the night. Then she whispered, "He wasn't supposed to die." "Neither was your child," I said. Her breathing quickened. "Stop talking." "Then tell me why, Vanessa. Tell me what you did." She looked away, tears streaking her face in the moonlight. "I just wanted what was mine." And that's when she said it, the words that sealed her fate. "He was supposed to die in that car. Both of them were." Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. That was enough. The recorder in my jacket captured every word. I could hear Patel's voice in my earpiece. "We've got it. Move in." But Vanessa panicked. Her hand tightened on the gun and the muzzle flashed. The sound rang out across the lake. I felt the impact tear through my shoulder, hot and numbing all at once. My knees buckled, and I hit the dirt hard. The pain came a second later, deep, pulsing, relentless. I heard shouts, heavy footsteps, and then another scream. Ridgefield police. Drop the weapon. Floodlights flooded the shore. Vanessa spun around, eyes wild, pointing the gun toward the voices. "You set me up!" she screamed. Patel shouted again. "Put it down, Vanessa! It's over!" Vanessa's scream broke into sobs. "He was supposed to die. They all were!" Then she dropped the gun and fell to her knees. The officers swarmed her. I felt a hand press against my wound. Patel's voice trembled as she called for medics. "Stay with me, Harold. You did it. You got her." I smiled weakly. "Miles, he's safe?" "He's safe," she said, eyes glassy. "You saved him." The darkness crept in slowly after that, but for once it didn't feel cruel. It felt finished. When I woke up 3 days later in the hospital, the room was quiet. My shoulder ached, but my heart was calm. Patel sat by the window, reading the newspaper. When she noticed me stirring, she smiled. "She confessed on record," she said. "The mechanic's testimony, your wire, it's all airtight. Vanessa's been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 of first-degree homicide." I nodded, the weight of everything settling like dust. Justice, slow, patient, and final. Weeks later, I attended the sentencing. Vanessa didn't look at me once. The judge's gavel fell, and she was led away in cuffs. Life imprisonment. No parole. No second chances. Months passed. Miles grew stronger. The court granted me guardianship first, then full custody. I remember the day I held him in my arms without the wires and machines. He opened his eyes, stared up at me, and smiled. It was the same smile Michael had when he was a baby, stubborn, fearless, alive. And as I rocked him to sleep that night, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Because the truth had been spoken, justice had been done, and the shadows that haunted the reservoir had finally gone quiet. And in that silence, I finally felt free. It's been 3 years since that night at Cedar Ridge Reservoir. The seasons have changed, the water's calm again, and the grass has grown where the police once stood. Most folks who pass by that lake don't know what happened there. But I do, and I see it every time the light hits the water just right, the moment that changed everything. Miles is 3 now. He runs through the house with a laugh that could wake the dead. And sometimes, it does. It wakes the memory of Michael, his stubborn smile, his soft-spoken kindness, the way he'd lift his boyhood fishing rod like it was a sword. Miles has his father's eyes. Every time he looks at me, I remember what love costs and what it's worth. Vanessa's trial ended quietly. No tears, no excuses, just the sound of chains and the closing of a cell door. The judge called it a tragedy born from greed. But I don't see tragedy when I look at Miles. I see redemption, living proof that evil didn't win. Detective Patel still visits once in a while. She brings her daughter, who always plays with Miles in the yard. We don't talk about the past much, but sometimes, when the sun starts to set, she'll glance toward the reservoir and whisper, "You did the right thing, Harold." And I'll just nod, because I know. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about anger. It's about balance, setting right what the world twisted. I didn't destroy Vanessa. I exposed her. I let the truth do the work. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. When I sit on my porch in the evenings, tea in hand, I sometimes think about that night. The splash, the cry, the cold. I thought I was pulling death from that water, but I wasn't. I was pulling out life. I was pulling out purpose, because my daughter-in-law threw a suitcase into the reservoir, and what I found inside was alive. Not just my grandson, but the part of me that still believed in justice, in love, and in second chances. And that was the truest revenge of all. Would you have done the same if it were you? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one.